Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Chatting the Pictures. I'm Cara Finnegan. I'm a writer, photography historian, and teacher, and I'm currently working on a book on the history of photography and the presidency.
And I'm Michael Shaw, publisher of Reading the Pictures. Great to see you again.
All right, are we ready? It's been a visual week. We say it every week, don't we, Michael?
Yeah, we did have some technical difficulties there too, so we're starting about 10 minutes late. Sorry about all that.
Yeah, so I hope people just had a chance to imbibe some extra coffee while they were waiting for us to appear. Hello.
Absolutely. So overall, the photos this week show how news and news photography is certainly not boring. And then my question, the follow-up is that always a good thing? So,
Ooh, foreshadowing. I like it.
So why don't we get the first shot up and we will
All
jump
right.
right into it.
Here we go with our first photo this week, a stunning photo.
Yeah, it's very interesting, very graphic. So this photo was taken by Brendan Smialowski. He is a freelance photographer who usually covers Washington and DC and politics in general, but this he posted on Instagram. The caption is brief, very, very brief caption just reads 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., April 4, 2018 is the date of the photo, and it was taken in Memphis. And maybe just to start us off, I would say that having looked at a lot of photography from the anniversary, the "I am a man" posters seem to be really almost common this year, and not you don't always see that every year in the anniversaries of either King's birth or death, but certainly the photo was out in force, or the poster was out in force, and the phrase was out in force this year. And we made a bit of a quip about this photo on our Twitter and social media, where we just said in a very pithy way, gender neutral. So,
yeah, that's one of the things I'm interested in inviting us to think about with this photo. The photo, I think my sense from looking a little bit at Smialowski's Instagram feed in general and some of the work he's featured on his website is his Instagram seems to be black and white, at least most recently. And so this seems to me maybe part of his own aesthetic interest. But I think the black and white imagery in this photo and a few of the other photos from that day and that event in Memphis that he posted on his Instagram feed is a real kind of visual harkening back to those photographs from Memphis in that period. The march and the events that King was in Memphis in 1968 to lead and participate in. There's a real visual connection just simply by virtue of the black and white, and then of course that's echoed by the "I am a man" posters repeating as well. What I think is interesting about your quip about gender neutral is that the "I am," the bottom of the poster's cut off. And so to me, what I love about the ambiguity is, if this image reads to you as a woman, then the "I am" without the man on the bottom is interesting in light of a lot of the conversations we've been having about gender and women's experiences in the media, at the same time that it also connects back to the King celebrations. But I think you're right; it's kind of marvelously ambiguous. And to me, I don't know about you, Michael, but to me, so what do you make of the framing, other than the fact that it's beautiful?
Well, just to go back, sorry, to the throwback aspect of this, where it echoes the black and white and the more historical look of protest marches and the civil rights movement. I was also thinking that how contemporary it was, and back to that whole theme of the dramatic aspect of news photography today. In this case, I think that the photo more than works. In some way, it sort of, is so stylized that it's maybe can be almost like moving to the edge of respect when it comes to honoring King. But at the same time, so as much as it like speaks to the past, I think it really speaks to the present too, where, we've been looking at a lot of pictures of the gun reform so students and the people that are protesting these days, and even how protest works as a communication medium, it is very stylized. So I think that style has become as much a form of speech and communication as rhetoric. So in this picture, the afro is sort of like a throwback to Angela Davis in a way, but it's also, really classy. And then, the black and white in terms of the glasses, and how that's, this is a fashion photograph as much as it's about identity and politics. So I think it's moving like, it's really contemporary as well as it also evokes the past. So I didn't answer your framing question, so maybe I'll throw that one back to you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because I think what you just said ties into what I was thinking about the framing, which is you have this, first of all, the Instagram square itself, right? The square format is very contemporary as well. And so that's one of the things I think that marks this as, not a replication, even though it does throw back in the use of black and white and with the sign. But I think the placement of the figure in the bottom, it in some ways, the framing with this wide expanse of sky, I was thinking about, I was like, well, could this be viewed as optimistic and, kind of King's vision and his dream, and, we're grounded, but maybe we can hope to achieve and aspire to something more. And so maybe it's optimistic. And then I thought, well, it's also, you could also read it the other way and say, I think of these protests and marches recently where people are holding up signs saying, I can't believe I still have to protest this stuff, right? So in some ways, it could be read as ironic that you have this beautiful image, the soaring sky, and yet here we are. And a lot of the news coverage about Memphis last week was talking about how Memphis is still a really difficult place to be really an African American citizen. And so there's a tension, I think, and the photo invites that. But it's also just so cool. You're right. It's so stylized.
No, but I completely agree in terms of just the framing, because and these are the tensions that a great news photograph is going to pick up. On one hand, given the reality of politics in the United States and how we're becoming so polarized, you can say that this is a photograph about marginalization. That as much energy and style and activism, as we're experiencing, it's still like she's in a very small portion of the frame. So, but then at the same time too, and I was thinking about that also in terms of, she's at the bottom of the frame, and so, there's so much sky there. It's like, whereas the boomers and King was a boomer, I believe, or, at the front edge of it, that there's a kind of jadedness of people who have been like fighting the fight for so long. But for young people and people who are just imbued with King conceptually, look at all the upside. Look at how much, like the sky's the limit. So, I think the photo's playing both ways.
Yeah. I think you're right. Should we move on and get into our next image?
Sure.
You have a caption for us here.
Yes, the caption on this, the photo's taken by AP photographer Khalil Hamra, and the caption reads, Palestinian protesters are seen through mirrors used to reflect the sunlight at Israeli soldiers during a protest next to the Gaza Strip border with Israel, east of Khan Yunis, April 2, 2018. Just very quickly, again, we're talking about this theme of style, and this is a really compelling, really beautiful photograph, but it's as dramatic, and it's very dramatic too, but it's also probably as informative as it is dramatic. And I think that that's what news photos are doing today, the really good ones, and it's, it's a reflection of the culture, and it's also a reflection of news photography. There's a lot of narrative here also. So you want to,
yeah, so talk a little bit about how it's informative. I mean, to me, the mirror to me is really the mirror to me is the thing in this image that activates the narrative, if you will, and that you get an image of both the people being photographed and kind of what they're up against, if you will. And to me, the fact that the only part of the photograph that is in focus for the viewer is what's in the mirror. So we're being invited to look at what they're facing, literally. And then the byproduct of that choice to focus on the content of the mirror, which, it creates a very cool image. But the other thing it does is it puts everybody else in a kind of in a less focused, fuzzier state visually. And, there's probably some kind of a metaphor there about the longstanding conflict as well. But so to me, it's informative, but is it informative?
Well, in a really banal way, I would say an emphatic yes. If you think about that, like the famous rule of thirds, you've got the picture in the picture, and the picture shows the actual battlefront. And to be honest, you don't see as many pictures of the actual fighting so much as you see more like pictures of soldiers and kind of more embedded kind of photography these days. So you've got the battle scene. You've got also you've got planning and consultation going on here in another piece of the picture, and then you've got the actual depiction of the attack. The guy on the other side of the pole. So you've got the optical attack in action. So there's a lot of just pure data there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it in that way. I was thinking of it more in the sense of a kind of larger narrative. But you're right, that at that moment, the photo really condenses all of those different parts of what's happening.
And also the mirror, it's not just seeing the battle, but, and I think you were alluding to this, but what we're really doing is they're not just attacking the Israelis with light, trying to blind them. An incredible metaphor there too, right? But they're also attacking the Israelis by shaming, and it's probably like more effective if a photo like this ends up being, beamed around the world. It's forcing the Israelis, at least if you're sympathetic to the Palestinian plight, you're forcing the Israelis to see them as oppressors. So it's like a double weapon.
And then that connects to the one of the analogies for for a North American audience would be the protests at Standing Rock, right, where they did the same thing, where they turned the mirror around. It's a form of confrontation, and as you said, like in a literal sense of we are trying to physically keep you from getting at us. Optically, but at the same time, it's also look at yourself. The other thing about the mirror that I thought was really interesting is the mirror in which what they see is what we can see. That mirror, the frame is really ornate, and so there's a kind of ad hocness about the photo that. And the way people are dressed, the backwards baseball hat, which the red of that echoes the red of the guy running in the mirror image. There's
Makes the Middle East great again.
It's sort of it's a kind of there's just something very ad hoc and vernacular maybe seems like too fancy of a word to use, but whatever will mirror is fine. In this situation, I think too.
And I think another little reference you could throw in there, and it's taking, as opposed to Standing Rock, brings us back to the Middle East, is this is like a solar-aged David and Goliath.
Yeah, like here we are with our mirrors and our burning tires, right? Yeah. The other thing that just the contrast, and again, his choice to shoot them from below, I think, is maybe important here. I mean, obviously that allows him to get access to that mirrored image, which I'm sure is the real technical reason he did that. But, you know, when you shoot up at people, you're also monumentalizing them to a certain extent. And it also allows, what also is allowed with that framing is, you know, you get the sense it's a beautiful day, right? It's this beautiful blue sky day. In a way, it's an analogy to the previous image we were talking about, that you've got this wide expanse of sky. And then in the bottom left side of the image, you've got this much more conflicted narrative playing out with the smoke and people actively running away, right? Exactly. And their mouths are covered, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Plays both ways. That's a lot of ironies. Blue skies limit, and then, you know, we can't see through the smoke.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Let's do it. So here's the final photo of the week.
Yeah, here's where I think drama then starts to not only be less constructive, but also becomes the whole point in a kind of Pyrrhic way. The caption reads, U.S. President Donald Trump throws his prepared remarks into the air while speaking about tax reform during a visit to White Sulphur Springs in West Virginia. The photo is taken by another really great news photographer for Reuters, Kevin Lamarque. And this is not part of the caption, but if you aren't a political junkie and did not see this picture this week, and it attracted a lot of attention, it's, I think what we're looking at is that Trump had prepared remarks, and he, just to generalize what happened, he basically discarded them as boring. He just threw them up in the air and said, nobody really wants to hear these anyway. He was supposed to be talking about tax reform. I think that's what the words on the paper are about. And instead, the forum turned into a rant about immigration, his 2016 election again, and just, you know, like, and then also trying to embrace, like, the old, I guess, the coal industry. So that's the context.
Yeah, you know, for me, this photo just it condenses the Trump presidency. And this might be the image that, you know, we look at years from now, and his face, right, is just, his facial expression is just like, you know, give it up, who cares? The paper toss in the air. It's a rejection of norms. And he's also literally throwing away the message in a way that, you know, I think
due process.
Yeah, in the sense that it embodies. And then, you know, my understanding is that, you know, then he went on to give a series of rambling remarks, which essentially were, you know, exhibiting nostalgia for campaign events and how many thousands of people were there at rallies. And then there was there were also remarks about immigration, which, you know, related to the very kind of red meat sorts of stuff he used to use on the campaign trail, and, you know, obviously still does on Twitter and other places. And so you know, like, if this photo lives 50 years from now, and I suspect that it will, this will be a real marker of this moment. You know, I don't know, you know, before I looked at the caption of this photo the first time I saw it, I thought, why did they glue something to the flag? What did they stick something on the flag? And then, you know, and I'd heard he'd thrown away his remarks, but I didn't realize he had literally thrown away his remarks.
That's another way to carry.
So then when I looked at the caption, I thought, oh my God, that, you know, so what's great about this photo is it not only captures that moment, but it's like a blot on the flag itself in this way. I don't.
And that speaks to the Trump administration too. It's another way to, like, characterize the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there ever were, if it were a visual metaphor, right, that would be it. Yeah, but so let's talk about all these people's faces. Also, I mean, to me, the paper and Trump's goofy face, you know, they don't read fully what's going on in this image until you look at all the faces of the people.
Yeah, and I think that you were talking about the longitudinal, like, dimension of this photo, and I think that's interesting too. If you think about this photo, project yourself, whatever, 15 years into the future, 5, even 3, because we know that this administration is not going to wear well, and Trump is taking advantage of the cynicism that's been, rampant in the country for years about politics. If you think about this, the documentary, effect of this photograph, how are these people going to look, down the road? It's really more of almost an enabling photo. And then in terms of also
like enabling of who or what?
The enabling of Trump and this kind of callousness, and we don't need process, and we don't need, to do anything that's boring, which, politics and governing is, and hearings and diplomacy is all inherently boring. Yeah. So,
like the being president stuff, basically.
Yeah, so these people were like not only parties to it, but they were, getting a rise out of it. It's not going to, I don't think the photo is going to, cast them in a better light going forward. And then in terms of context too, by the way, the two guys on either side of Trump, these are Senate challengers, GOP primary challengers for Democratic Senator Joe Manchin's seat in West Virginia. So one guy's Evan Jenkins on the left, the other guy's the Attorney General, a guy named Morrissey on the right. And what Trump was doing actually was the GOP is terrified that Don Blankenship, the guy who runs that, or ran that huge mining company down there where the, people got, the miners were killed. Blankenship is the guy who looks like the early front runner in terms of the primary to face Manchin. So Trump went down there to have these two other guys, kind of avoid what happened in Alabama if he could, and to kind of give these guys the boost. So, when you talk about him saying, we don't need process and we don't need, to do anything in a conventional way. It's not just these citizens or local officials that are kind of on board with that, but these are these two prospects for the Senate that are like, on board with that kind of mentality also.
Yeah, but are they, are they all on board in the context of, when I look at these faces, that, there are a couple of people that seem to be really enjoying the moment. And there are a couple of people who seem to have faces that are the woman on the far right, for example, and then the other woman in the photo, and then the person next to her, the third person over from Trump. They seem to be kind of like, okay, I'm having to endure this awkward moment here, or did he just do what I think he did? And, it's a snapshot in time, and I don't want to necessarily ascribe, agency to each individual person in terms of what their reaction was. But to me, the photo just kind of condenses the sense of what is happening here. And then what I presume is the Secret Service agent back standing by the flag, he's sort of looking out at us. In a way, part of me feels like he's sort of back there protecting the flag. He kind of represents the norms in a way, right? And that kind of
overshadowed that way too.
Yeah, and it's sort of him back there, and then there's the paper in the air, and then you've got this little display happening in the front. So, so to me, the photo, as much as I think it tells us. It doesn't tell us anything new about Trump. That would be the one thing I would say. I think it just performs what we're seeing, and whether you support it or not, that his mode of governing. Right. But I do think there are these like little visual punctuations of kind of question marks, like really is that what we're about now? Maybe I want to be optimistic about the existence of dissent, but I like how you talked about there's this immediate political situation, and then there's this other longer term way of reading it too.
I agree, but I think you do see that ambivalence. I think you're absolutely right, and in a way it's like you look back, and I think they will look back and we'll see it more as like Stockholm syndrome or something, and not only
because these people also probably are all prepared to speak. They have their name they're going to follow whatever instructions they've been given, presumably, because that's what you do when you get to be on a panel with the president. You do what they tell you to do. And maybe he's not doing that.
Right. And one thing that's also interesting, I wasn't sure, or we weren't sure whether to include a Trump photo at all, or how much to be like, putting the focus on Trump at all right now. And a lot of the Democrats and columnists are also saying, if you get distracted by Trump and his antics or the Trump show, or the Trump personality, it's not going to be effective for the midterms, because really, if you're running on issues, you're running on healthcare, and you're running on the tax legislation, it's a winner. It's been a winner. So in some way, the picture also is like, it's a replay of the paper towel photo from Puerto Rico. It's sort of the guys, it's sort of Trump as a one note.
Yeah, and then what do you, they want to keep the focus on the message, but he doesn't want to keep the focus on the message.
The message is him.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
yeah.
Well, maybe we've kind of done it this week, perhaps.
I know. We've had a lot to say about where we are. Do you have any kind of closing wrap-up comments for us?
I think we did pretty good. I think, again, this last photo was more about, drama, but drama as an end in itself. But besides this last photo, we are seeing an amazing amount of style, drama, and also content, in news photography. And that's why, they're becoming more and more popular. And there's, more, almost one or two or three powerful images or more to talk about every week, where back in the day, it was like, maybe one or two of those a month. So
yeah. So we'll continue to try to resist being completely distracted by pretty shiny things, but the pretty shiny things themselves are also very much a part of the story right now. I think we just have to admit that too. Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank people for watching. Again, if you like what we're doing, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You can also sign up on our website, readingthepictures.org, for our Week in Review newsletter. We have been doing these China pictures almost every Saturday now, so we'll publish a replay of it on our website by tomorrow, and we welcome your feedback, and we hope to see you again next week.
Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.